Good afternoon, everyone. This is Carrie McCann-Botel, President of the Iowa Council of Foundations. Apologies if any of you were just disconnected. I'm not quite sure what happened, but it looks like we have everyone dialed back in. We will be recording today's webinar, so if you have other colleagues or peers that you want to share today's information with, I'll be sending out a link following the webinar today. And it will also be posted on the Iowa Council of Foundations website under our resources section. So please keep an eye out for that. I'm happy to have many of you joining us today from the Iowa Council of Foundations membership and also some of our partners from the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. We are going to leave all of our participants in a muted mode today just so there isn't any background noise. And we have a chat box function available in the bottom left-hand corner. There will be an interactive portion of our webinar today, so please use the chat box function when those questions are being asked, and you can just simply type in your responses there. And we have a smaller group joining us today, so at the end of our time together, we will open up the lines if anyone has any specific questions that they would like to ask to our presenters. So I will go ahead and turn things over to our first presenter today, Carrie Rankin, the Assistant Director for Development for the Iowa Governor's STEM Advisory Council. Carrie and I connected a few weeks ago, and she was anxious to provide ICOF members with an update on what the Advisory Council has been doing, and also a specific update on the Active Learning Community Partners Working Group. So, Carrie, I will go ahead and turn things over to you.
All right, there we go. I just needed to unmute myself. Well, thank you, Carrie, and also thank you to the Iowa Council of Foundations for giving us this opportunity to introduce the Iowa Governor's STEM Advisory Council to you, those of you that are not aware of the STEM Council, and also the STEM Active Learning Community Partners. As Carrie noted, my name is Carrie Rankin, and I'm the Assistant Director for Development with the STEM Council. And today I'm going to offer just a brief overview of the STEM Council and give you a short update on some of our educational programming, but then I want to share some great news about a key priority of one of our original and very active working committees of the STEM Council, and that's the Active Learning Community Partners. So as many of you know, STEM is the acronym for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math, and you also know that STEM is a vital economic development advantage for quality and numerous job growth opportunities in our state of Iowa. The goal of increasing STEM interest and achievement, as you know, is critical to regaining Iowa's legacy as a leader in education where we were a number of years ago and in workforce development. And as noted by the statistics that are shown on this slide, STEM graduates are and will continue to be in great demand to meet current and future workforce needs in Iowa, and that's why the STEM Council was established. So just briefly touching on a little bit of the history of the STEM Council for those of you that are not aware, we are a collaboration of bipartisan Iowa legislators, educators, businesses, nonprofits, students, and families focusing on improving STEM opportunities and awareness in Iowa. So as you can tell, there's a lot of stakeholders in the work that we do and a lot of spokes in the wheel that really do come together quite well to make sure that we're able to achieve our goals, but also to offer very, very valuable input on that. Since our inception in July of 2011, the key goals really of the STEM Council have been to increase interest, awareness, and achievement for pre-K through 12 students throughout the state of Iowa. We're striving really to provide high-quality, vetted STEM programming for all Iowa students, regardless of where they are in the state or their abilities, with the ultimate goal, as I say, and I visit across the state of Iowa businesses, ultimate goal of growing our own future workforce for Iowa business and industry. The Council STEM programming is really intended to be an additional resource for STEM educators in both formal and informal settings to expand their base of STEM knowledge and professional development. leading the STEM in Iowa. We're very, very fortunate to be building our work based on public-private partnerships, and this is pretty evident, as it is noted on this slide, by the leadership of our council, with our co-chairs being both Lieutenant Governor Kim Reynolds and Dr. Chris Nelson, who's the CEO and President of Kemin Industries. While our official STEM team is comprised of just 10 employees, so 4 in our operations center here in Cedar Falls and 6 regionally across the state of Iowa, we're so fortunate that we have an organizational structure that through a number of executive statewide and regional advisory boards offers the assistance and support of, I say 250 contributors, but it's probably closer to 300 or more contributors and volunteers and advocates for statewide STEM. So we're very, very excited and very appreciative about that. In case you are not aware, one of the first actions that the STEM Council took was to establish a regional network of STEM hubs, which are affiliated with an institution of higher education. And this map that you're looking at right now represents those STEM hub locations, each of which house one of our 6 STEM regional managers, who are what I say are boots on the ground, helping to raise awareness, share resources, and encourage participation and use of Iowa STEM programming, and really elevating the awareness of the work that we're doing, but also gathering input and feedback to move our programming forward. As I mentioned previously, the Iowa STEM Council is very fortunate to have strong bipartisan support, which has provided for the last, going on our 6th year now, $5.2 million in legislative appropriations to make our programming possible throughout Iowa. In addition to that, we're very, very excited that we have cost-sharing grants and private sector investments given annually that have almost matched that appropriation amount. So it truly is a public-private partnership that makes this work and continuing to form to support the STEM Council. So what do we do? What's the meat and potatoes? I'm not going to go into each one of these programs, but through legislative appropriation, the Governor's STEM Advisor Council is able to offer really exemplary programs, STEM programs throughout the state, which are listed here on this chart. And I'm not going to go into each one of them because I could take up the full 60 minutes doing that, and I don't want to do that. But I do want to tell you that these programs are utilized by over 3,000 STEM educators annually, impacting over 100,000 Iowa students, and including many, many business partners in many communities and throughout the state of Iowa. If you're interested in getting into the detail of each one of these programs, you can find that level of detail at our website, which is www.iowastem.gov. I do want to just show a couple of stats because a very important component of the STEM Council programming is evaluation of the work that we're doing. For instance, in our signature program, which is STEM Scale Up, high-quality vetted educational programs such as Project Lead the Way, FIRST Robotics, ST Math, as the number of others, are offered on a menu to STEM educators. Educators apply for these programs from the menu, and then awards are made in each one of the 6 regions of the state of Iowa. The educators then receive professional development on the program and then take that back into their classrooms or their informal settings and use that with their students and implement that with their students. So the evaluation information that's shown here indicates and shows you that STEM programming truly is making an impact, and states that students participating in STEM Scale Up are scoring higher on average than those that are not. And I'll just note that we're particularly excited and interested about the results occurring with minority students as we continue to try to provide equitable programming to all Iowa students across Iowa. A second one of our programs, and one that's really evolving quickly, is what we call STEM BEST, which stands for Businesses Engaging Students and Teachers. And just a note that the STEM Council has awarded 18 of these STEM BEST programs since 2014, which really offer schools, districts, or cluster these school districts an opportunity to grow a series of community collaborations really that bring school and business partnerships closer together. With the STEM-Best model, professionals and educators really truly do work side by side to develop and deliver the curriculum still tied to Iowa core standards, but pertinent to local industry needs. And the students in these programs learn at business and industry sites or an industry site that might be located within a school campus. So it's a different way from the traditional style of lecture and teaching in the classroom, but it's really putting that application piece front and center in terms of what the schools are teaching and what the kids are learning. So the 18 programs that have been awarded so far serve as models for others that are developing across the state, and we hope to double, if not triple, this number in the next coming years. So the last program I want to just talk about in terms of some evaluation notes here is, in statistics and data, is our longest standing program, which is actually the STEM Teacher Externship Program. And with this program, each summer about 65 teachers are placed with an Iowa Workplace host for a 6-week immersion and experience into the application really of what they teach. So they go to work for a business or workplace host, do real work, and then take that information back into the classroom. The teachers earn a stipend and graduate credit, but more importantly, as I said, the application of what they're learning is, through this project that they do, is then taken back and incorporated into the teaching in their classroom. So not only do these teachers, after this experience, have a better understanding of the connection between education and industry practice, but 92% report that it's the most valuable professional development that they've ever received. We're excited to hear those statistics, and even more excited for those teachers that are getting that great experience and being able to take it back and share with their students. So in addition to all of our STEM educational programming, one of the first and most, I would say, important activities that STEM Council established when we started was a formation of what we call STEM working groups. And these groups really keep the STEM Council connected with activities relating to STEM, but might be outside of the realm of our offering of programs. And I would just note that most, if not all, of these working groups are comprised of a combination of STEM advisory board members, but even more so hardworking volunteers that are doing it because they are committed to the work that we're doing and are volunteering on behalf of the council. So at this time, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Deb Duncase, Executive Director with the Iowa Children's Museum, and Gracie Bransgard, Program Manager with the State Public Policy Group, who will be sharing information about the STEM Active Learning Community Partners and a very exciting and important program that they are working. So Deb and Gracie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Duncase, and as Carrie said, I'm the ED of the Iowa Children's Museum here in Coralville, Iowa. And I'm going to start just by telling you a little bit about the goal of our working group. Our working group has actually been in existence for the entire time of the Governor's STEM Advisory Council. I've been serving on the council from the beginning, and we are made up of, right now, a little over 250 individuals across the state of Iowa who deliver STEM programs. And so we're made up of people who work at zoos and nature centers and science centers and museums and rec centers and libraries, all sorts of organizations who provide out-of-school STEM experiences for kids. So our goal in forming this working committee was to increase the quantity and the quality of opportunities for kids and their families to engage in high-quality active learning STEM. And one of the first obstacles we came up against really was we all had a lot of different definitions of what STEM is and how we were delivering STEM to the community. So we sort of formed 4 different areas of focus. One was advocacy, networking, just finding out who we were across the state of Iowa, connecting with each other so that we all shared best practices. And the thing that we felt that we were most in need of was professional development. Before we start talking about what that may have looked like, this is where we're going to open it up to you. Oops. And I want to ask you to think about, and if you would use the chat box, just to think about what was your most memorable learning experience as a child. So I'm going to give you a minute or two to just type something in. It can be a very brief answer, but I just want you to think about what today as an adult, what do you remember most vividly as a child, the most memorable learning experience? So while we're waiting for someone to type in an answer, so Leah says a field trip. And Leah, where was the field trip to? While she's typing that in, so okay, we got it. The state capital, Living History Farms. So it's interesting. I ask this question oftentimes, and to the Grout Museum, good. I ask this oftentimes when we're giving presentations about the STEM Active Learning Working Group. And it turns out that most people, as adults, their most memorable learning experience as a kid was something that happened outside the formal school setting. And Carrie, if you would unmute yourself, you were at a workshop that I did a few weeks ago that Gracie and I did, and you shared one of your experiences. Would you mind sharing that again?
Can you hear me now?
There? Yeah,
yep.
Great.
Yep. I've actually got a couple of, I'll try to summarize them into about 30 seconds. One was when I was growing up on a farm and working with my father to take apart our cultivator and really learning how to build and unbuild things. And I would say similarly, at one of the daycares that I used to attend was building Lego houses. So
and when people share their most memorable learning, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it inspired me to want to pursue opportunities to be able to build things.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that the common denominator with most people is that they had a lot of fun. It was something exciting and adventurous, and it was some kind of open exploration. And when you look at what Leah wrote, she mentions a lot of places that were outdoors, a Living History Farm. She went to the Science Center, and then participation in her youth philanthropy group. These are exciting ways to explore the world around you. So it's no surprise that when we ask people this, most people answer that their most memorable learning experience happened outside the school classroom. This makes sense, too, because the research shows that 82% of a child's time is actually spent outside of the formal school classroom. Again, and it's time spent in nature centers, with Girl Scout groups, museums, after-school enrichments, lots of ways that kids explore the world. Kids are naturally designed to explore the world around them, and active learning is how kids learn how to grow into responsible, healthy adults. We believe, our working group, the valuing and supporting active learning in childhood may be the very best way to produce the creative thinkers with the strong adaptive strategies needed to face the 21st century. When I was a child, and I'm really old, but when I was a kid growing up, there were only a few careers that you could think about, that you could consider going into. And so the training was very specific for those careers. You knew what you had to study and what you had to learn. Today, sitting here, we have no idea. The world is changing so quickly that we don't know what careers are going to be open to them, and we don't know exactly what they need to study to be prepared for those future careers. So the best thing we can do for them is help them be creative problem solvers. And STEM is an incredibly powerful way to help our kids develop those skills that they need for the 21st century. We know that active learning literally sculpts the brain. It helps kids build the pathways through the brain that help them have the resources that they need. It's the behavior that's evolved that helps make it possible for us to test out new ideas and find out what works. Oftentimes, in formal classroom settings, kids are looking for a right answer or a wrong answer. In the world of informal STEM, there are lots of right answers. Kids have lots of opportunities to explore different solutions to the same problem, and that's very exciting and empowering to kids. We know that active learning helps kids to create the context to connect science, technology, engineering, and math to the problems and challenges faced in the real world. So the out-of-school context helps kids make meaning of the activities that they're actually participating in. And we know that supporting this natural inclination of kids to explore STEM has lasting benefits. It makes them excited, lifelong learners. Before kids even enter school, they've developed their own ideas about the physical, biological, and social worlds and how they work. And by listening and taking these ideas seriously, educators can build on what kids already know and can do. And I'll just mention that all these photos of kids involved in STEM were taken here at the Iowa Children's Museum in Coralville. Even though we know all that, though, the current data on school readiness and early math and science achievement is showing us that we're not giving our kids the support they need to be STEM smart, to give them a good start in being good STEM students. 40% of U.S. children are not ready for kindergarten, and I think this was on one of Carrie's earlier slides, and too many children reach grade 4 lacking key science and math skills. That is what we are trying to change through this working group. There's a group called Change the Equation that did a survey in 2010 that showed that nearly 1/3 of American adults would rather clean their bathrooms than do a math problem. That is terrifying. So what's to be done? Well, that's where our STEM working group comes into play. We have gotten together over the past few years, over 200 STEM professionals across the state of Iowa, all working in out-of-school environments. And we've worked to try to figure out what exactly does active STEM look like? And not just STEM, but quality, high-quality STEM active learning. What is it made up of? What does it look like? That's the first place to start. And so we came up with some key identifiers that quality active STEM has to be purposeful and planned. It's not just grabbing a STEM activity off the web. It has to be very purposeful. It has to support STEM learning skills. It has to reinforce STEM concept development and accurate STEM concept development. There's a lot of STEM out there that maybe isn't quite as accurate as it should be. It needs to further develop STEM knowledge and practice. Absolutely, high quality has to offer young children time to reflect and make meaning on the experience that they're participating in. We've come to believe that to be as powerful and as impactful as possible, that quality STEM has to provide an opportunity for a youth voice. It absolutely can't just be kids following step-by-step recipes, but they have to have a voice in their own learning. Building positive relationships is key, as is building enthusiasm for STEM. So where does all this STEM active learning take place? Certainly some of it takes place in the formal school setting, but we know that daily, that 82% of a child's time spent outside of school, they're learning when they visit museums and libraries, after-school programs, science centers, all kinds of boys and girls clubs, YMCAs, scout programs, summer camps, 4-H. There are a wide array of opportunities for kids to get involved with active STEM. So here we are. We know what it is. We've identified it. We know who we are. We've connected with STEM providers around the state of Iowa. Now our key question for our working group is how do we begin to provide professional development that gives informal educators the training and the tools that we need to provide high-quality STEM that meets all of those above indicators. And we actually have found a solution to that problem. I'm now going to turn it over to Gracie from the Iowa After School Alliance and let you take it from here, Gracie.
Great. Hello, everyone. Like Deb said, my name is Gracie Bransgard. I'm a program manager at the Iowa After School Alliance, and I've been working as a member of the ALCP group for about a year now. So what we were, as Deb left off, what we were left with was thinking about how we provide this professional development and how we create a system that helps these informal educators understand what high-quality active learning STEM looks like and how we get there. So after doing a lot of diligent research, we found an evaluation tool called the Dimensions of Success, or DOS. It's an observation-based evaluation tool, so that means that we need a certified DOS observer to go into a program and observe an activity, and they will assign a rating 1 through 4 for each of these 4 domains. And in fact, the 4 domains listed are a part of the DOS tool, but each of these 4 domains then get broken down into 3 dimensions. So you have 12 dimensions that define what high-quality active learning STEM looks like. And when we found this tool, some of the things that we really liked about it were that it was really flexible. So it can be adapted to fit in any setting that a STEM activity is taking place. So we can even use it in the formal classroom, as well as all of the various informal learning settings that Deb had listed earlier. Another thing we liked was that it goes so in-depth, as you can see, just these 4 domains, and then breaks it down further into 12 dimensions, so we can really get an accurate picture of what we're talking about and what we're looking for. So I'm going to go really quickly into these 4 domains, partly because I just want you to have a better understanding of how in-depth this tool is and what exactly we're looking for when we talk about high-quality active learning STEM. So the first one is features of a learning environment, and this is really your basics of what is happening in an activity, where it's taking place, how the activity is being set up, and what materials are being used. So really your basic who, what, where, when, why of a STEM activity. We want to make sure everything being used for the activity is age appropriate and engaging, and that we're using the right space to host the activity. The second thing that an observer will look for using this DOS tool in an activity is for some activity engagement. So we break down this idea into 3 other dimensions, the first being participation, and Carrie had mentioned during her part about equity and equitable programming, and this is absolutely what the participation, the purposeful activities, and engagement with STEM try and cover, making sure that every single student has equal access to the activity and is equally engaged. In this, we also want to make sure that the activities we're doing in our programs are moving students towards a learning goal. This was kind of revolutionary when we took this to our workshops because, of course, informal educators think about learning goals, but having them write down a learning goal and then being really purposeful about the activities that they came up with in order to meet that goal really expanded the level of quality we were seeing in our programs. Also with engagement with STEM, we are really looking at whether or not activities are hands-on and if they're minds-on. So like the picture shows, are students getting a chance to really physically engage with STEM? Active learning is one of the best ways that kids are learning, and they can't do that unless they literally have their hands on it. But we also want to make sure that they're not just being fed the instructions and not just being fed the learning, that they are a part of that as well, and that they are doing some of that minds-on work. So the third domain is STEM knowledge and practices, and this is kind of the meat and potatoes of developing that content learning and understanding about a STEM idea. So it's not just, for instance, if a topic of the day was dinosaurs, we want to make sure that students are expanding their knowledge and understanding about dinosaurs and some of the specifics there. But also under inquiry, we want to make sure that they are getting chances to practice some STEM skills. So the picture is a great example of a student getting to practice a STEM skill. We want them to be actively involved in that inquiry. Along with that, we want them to have chances to reflect on the learning that they're doing because, like Deb had mentioned earlier, that's really how they're going to make meaning of the activity and of what they just did, is by having set times where they're either challenged to think about what they did or given more opportunities to make connections to different ideas that they experience throughout the day. And the fourth domain is kind of a new a new concept that we've been talking about, particularly in the after-school world, but I think this is becoming more prevalent in education in general, is making sure that we are giving students their own voice and opportunities to drive part of their learning. So the first part in this youth development domain is relationships. And this is one of the most important things that often gets overlooked when we talk about STEM activities, is the importance of having positive relationships between students themselves and also between the student and the facilitator or the teacher. It's this kind of safe learning environment that's going to make students feel comfortable enough to take risks and try out new things, both of which are really important for students to be successful, not only in school, but then once they're out into the workforce and just being successful people. Is that daring to try something new and being okay with the risk of failing. And you can't do that unless you have really positive relationships. The second piece is relevance. So we want to make sure that everything we're doing in our after-school programs is connecting back to the students' lives and is seen as really relevant to the students, because they're going to get so much more out of the activity if they see how it relates to something that they're experiencing or that they're concerned about, versus thinking that this is totally unrelated and has nothing to do with their own lives. Related to that, we are working on finding more opportunities for youth voice to come through with some of these STEM activities. And that means that we are giving students some ownership on the activities and over some of their learning. And this is probably one of the scariest things for informal educators and educators alike to do, because it means that we're giving over some control about where the activity is going to go to our students. And that can be kind of a scary thing to do, because we don't know how necessarily the activity will end up. So in our workshops and through this tool, we're giving these informal educators more training on how to do this more comfortably and how to navigate this piece, because some of these things aren't things that some of the educators or some of the participants in our workshops have done before necessarily. So now I have a short video, and this was also done at the Iowa Children's Museum where Deb works, and this video gives a really nice comparison of one of the activities that they do at the Children's Museum, kind of pre and post this DOS tool. So I'm going to play this really quick.
At the Iowa Children's Museum, we're dedicated to providing kids with high-quality STEM active learning. Making slime has always been one of our favorite STEM activities. It's highly engaging to kids and is a great way for kids to learn about the properties of materials and chemical reactions. When we began using the Dimensions of Success STEM Program Quality Planning tool, we realized that our STEM activity wasn't quite as high quality as we thought. It wasn't inquiry-based, nor were we stimulating kids to reflect on the STEM content. There was no youth voice in making slime and no connection to the real world. Once we DOSed our slime activity, all that changed.
Our challenge is going to be, can we make it bounce? Can we make our own recipe bounce? And can we make our own recipe stretch? Think about how a substance like this, how you might use it in your home or just out in the world.
What would you do with the brick? We make a ton of them. We have to build a big house. A big bouncy house, maybe? A big bouncy house.
So if you, let's see. If you made these into bricks and you built something with them, the walls would be squishy and bouncy.
Everything would be squishy and bouncy.
Is it a natural disaster that these bouncy houses do really well in? Is there some kind of natural disaster? What do you think, Claire?
A tornado.
You think they do okay against a tornado? What other things might they do really well?
Where I'm from, in Washington State, we have a thing that we get sometimes. It's called an earthquake. Do you guys know what happens in an earthquake? It does. So if we had a house made of this stuff, what would happen to the house, you think?
It wouldn't have over.
Yeah, it would just
Before DOS, the level of student engagement was less purposeful. Kids just followed the teacher's slime recipe. Applying the DOS planning tool to slime really ramped up our activity. It became more engaging, presented opportunities to apply authentic STEM practices, and gave kids a youth voice in the STEM active learning.
Okay, so that was the video, and as I think the video well demonstrates, looking at the activity pre-DOS versus post-DOS, you can see the students are so much more engaged and getting so much more out of the activity. They're starting to make connections between what they're doing at the program and how it would relate to other things going on in the world. I love that clip about talking about building the bricks and building a house out of this slime and how it would do against an earthquake. That is making meaning and doing some active learning that is going to be much more impactful to the student than just doing a cookbook step-by-step recipe with slime before. And that right there is the impact of DOS, is we're taking activities and kind of ramping them up in terms of their quality in order to give them a greater impact and complement what's going on in the classroom a little bit more, and really giving students a hands-on opportunity to engage with STEM. So we've been using DOS for a few years now with the ALCP, and we've been using it in a few ways. The Iowa After School Alliance hosts and holds the DOS Observer Network in Iowa. So we have a team of 15 people from across the state who are certified DOS observers, and they conduct these DOS observations and programs all around the state, and we offer this free of charge to programs as just an opportunity for ongoing self-improvement and self-assessment. So that's the first and the second. The third is that the DOS tool has also been implemented into a lesson planning tool. So I'll get into some of the workshops that we've done, but we've been using this lesson planning tool, and so that is really nice. The DOS tool itself is good for observing activities in progress. The lesson planning tool gets to the activity before it's even an activity. So when an educator has an idea of a topic like dinosaurs, this lesson planning tool will walk them step by step through that and give them a lot of good guiding questions to make sure that the activity they create is meeting all 12 of these dimensions really well. And then the fourth thing is a bit intangible, but not any less important. And Deb kind of hit on this before, was that when the ALCP group first formed, it was difficult for us to have these conversations about what high-quality active learning STEM looked like, because we didn't have a common language to talk about it. We didn't have these 12 dimensions to get really specific and nail down what it looked like. But DOS was able to do that. It also lets us, when we have observers go to a program, they, of course, assign the ratings to all 12 dimensions, but then there's also an opportunity for these observers to provide feedback to programs. And having these 12 dimensions and this common language allows for us to have really productive conversations, because we both are on the same page about what we're talking about and what we mean when we talk about relevance or youth voice and things like that. So talked a little bit about how we are using DOS. We hold the DOS Observer Network in the state and try to provide that free of cost to programs. Another thing that the ALCP is doing is hosting professional development workshops for informal educators. This is by far and away the greatest need of after-school providers and informal educators in the state. Everywhere we go, people talk about professional development and extra training is so critical, and it's something that they don't have easy access to. Unlike classroom teachers who have kind of ongoing and regular opportunities for professional development, that is not the case for the informal side. So we put together and designed professional development workshops using this DOS tool. And Carrie had showed before the map of Iowa and how the STEM Council broke out the state into 6 regions. And so we have used that geography and have hosted a workshop in each of the 6 hubs or the 6 regions. We were also able to provide, thanks to some grant money, we're able to provide all of the workshops free of charge to attendees. And all we asked of attendees was that they submit before the workshop a lesson plan of a STEM activity that they were using in their program. And then we asked them, after they went through the workshop and learned about the DOS tool, to then go back to their program and DOSify that same lesson plan and send it back to us. We then looked and compared the before and after versions of the lesson plans and used the DOS tool to then assign the lesson plans a rating 1 through 5 for each of these 12 dimensions. And the change that we saw was pretty dramatic. So I wanted to share that data with you really quick because it just speaks to the impact of what such a small thing like DOS can have on program quality, and it's pretty amazing. So we talked about features of a learning environment. Remember, that's just the basics of where are you hosting your activity, what materials are you using, and then how are you structuring your activity. And we saw an average improvement of 153% before and after DOS. The greatest jump here is that organization piece, and that is really just writing out each step of your activity. And these kind of basic foundational dimensions are going to have just phenomenal impact on the quality of an activity, because if you have a strong foundation for your activity, there's so much more to build off of that. So we saw 153% improvement for this domain. In the second domain, which is activity engagement, we saw an average percentage improvement of 50%. I think the largest, I'm just eyeballing it here, is in the participation. So that is making sure that all students have access to the activity equally, and we're using equitable programming and engaging all students on the same level. So that's really important to making sure that we're not leaving students out. The third, with STEM knowledge and practices, seeing an average improvement of 52% pre and post lesson plan. The greatest jump here is that reflection piece. So that is setting aside time for students to reflect on the activity and to really make meaning of the activity and put together a lot of that learning that they did in order to make connections among kind of a range of ideas. And then the final domain, youth development, we saw an average improvement of 95%. The greatest jump being that relationships piece, which I had mentioned earlier is one of the strongest predeterminants for developing a good STEM identity in students, because you need that comfortable and safe learning environment for students to feel okay with taking risks and trying new things and voicing their opinions and ideas. That can be a really scary thing for kids to do. And so if you have these positive relationships and you have a really nice, warm learning environment, students are going to feel much more comfortable doing that. And so we saw just a huge improvement in relationships there, which is really positive for us. So we've done a lot of work so far, but of course our work is never done, and we don't plan on stopping anytime soon. With turnover in informal and after-school programs, there's always a need for more training and more professional development, so we plan to do just that. We are right now working on developing an online library of DOS resources. Like I had mentioned, we had asked each workshop attendee, and right now we've hosted 6 workshops, so we have a good list of attendees, and we've asked had asked each of them to submit their DOS lesson plan. So we are right now trying to build an online library to provide those lesson plans to the greater after-school community, because those are all really nice, high-quality lesson plans that are just available right now. We're working on continuing to build and expand on our network of DOS observers. Those are the observers that travel the state and conduct observations and help provide coaching and feedback for programs as an ongoing improvement tool. We also want to continue providing professional development workshops and trainings for educators. And one of the most important things is that we want to be able to do that without a fee attached for educators. We want to make sure that these trainings and workshops are as accessible as possible so that even the smallest or most rural program can come to these and have access to these resources. Because we're seeing the positive impact that DOS can have, we want to make sure that there are as few barriers as possible to providing these. And then, of course, we want to continue to collect this DOS data so that we are also doing some self-improvement on our side, making sure that we're still providing a positive impact and helping to improve the quality of these STEM activities and active learning, but then also to look at where the needs are, both locally and statewide, in terms of STEM and after school. So that's all we have. If anyone has any questions, I think we would be happy to answer those right now.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. It's just a wealth of knowledge that you've shared. I'm going to go ahead and unmute the lines if anyone has questions that they want to ask. And you can, of course, continue to feel free to use the chat box in the bottom left-hand corner. While I'm unmuting everyone, I would be interested, Carrie, if you could just talk a little bit about the funding landscape for your work and how it's currently supported and what you see in the future from the funding perspective. And also if you could just mention some suggestions on the best ways for ICOF funders to engage in this work, that would be helpful.
The conference has been unmuted.
Sorry about that. I accidentally muted myself again. And actually, I may turn that question over with the support of Deb and Gracie for the answer on that. So I talked a little bit during my part of the presentation in terms of the specific programming and funding that we use for the STEM Council programs. This is an interesting and unique opportunity, the DOS training that the Active Learning Community Partners have put together, and they have been working very hard as part of that work to secure some national grant funding. So Gracie, would you mind speaking for a minute or two about what's going on with that?
Sure. So we are on our second national grant. Before we had received some funding from the Noyce Foundation, and right now we are almost halfway through a STEM Next grant. And so those grants have made possible all of the workshops and trainings that we've done, as well as be able to provide observations and some data collection free of charge for programs. So right now, that's what we're operating on. But of course, we're looking, because the grant money won't continue forever, we're looking at some sustainability measures and really looking to localize some of our funding. Right now, when I had showed this slide about some of our future goals and things we would like to do, one thing is that right now we've been operating kind of at the state level, and we would like to localize that more in building up some regional networks using the same geography as the 6 STEM hubs, with the idea that then we would be able to have ongoing workshops and trainings in each network using trainers there locally. So that's what we're working on right now, and looking for sustainability options within that.
And this is Deb. I will add to that with the STEM Next grant, that is a cash match grant. So we are looking for funding to help meet our cash match obligations. And then also with all of the workshops that our working group has been facilitating for the past 2 years, all of the people involved, all of the working group members are donating their services in kind. So there's been a lot, hours and hours of work that's donated to this project because the people in the working group are so dedicated and believe so strongly in the mission of our group that we're just really committed to making sure that every STEM provider in Iowa has access and an opportunity to have this PD.
And I would only add that, even though the DOS training per se is not on our regular menu of programming on behalf of the STEM Council, what this working group has done to develop this and move it to this level is just phenomenal. And it aligns so nicely with the other work that we're doing and how it provides that continuation between formal and informal settings of the value of high-quality STEM programming and how to deliver that. It's wonderful what this working group has done. So we're really, really excited to be working with them to support them and help move that forward.
Great, thanks so much. Do any other attendees have questions that they'd like to ask before we wrap up this afternoon? Okay, well, thanks again to each of you for sharing your piece of the message today. I think that the DOS information will be of particular interest to our grade level reading partners across the state as they consider before and after school programming and also summer programs that all include enrichment activities, many of them STEM already. So we'll be sure to share out the recording with our grade level reading partners. And I also think this information is beneficial for our ICOF members as they consider funding proposals in the STEM space. So thank you all so much for sharing this great information. And we will get this recording posted later this afternoon so you can share it with others. Those of you who are ICOF members, we have our next program on Thursday, January 26th from 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. at the Des Moines Botanical Gardens. And we will be focusing on the legislative session and how we can engage in public policy conversations as ICOF members and funders, and we're also going to be joined by our grade level reading colleagues and partners at that meeting as well. So hope you can join us. All the information for that and other upcoming events can be found on our website, iowacounciloffoundations.org. Thanks again, everyone, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.